Good afternoon. Welcome to GrainTV. My name's Cody Bills. This is Logan Burgess. Today is Thursday, the 21st, and we had export sales come out this morning. Let's turn right over to Fire Tip, see where we closed off the day here. Corn trading up 1.5 cents. Beans trading up 26 1/4, really outperforming in the grain complex today. Wheat down 7.5 and wheat down 5 3/4. Wheat really was underperforming here today, really on the some of the news that there should be some weather events moving into the Midwest, moving into some of that hard red winter wheat growing regions, and around Thursday and moving into the next week. That should drop a good amount of precipitation for them, and I think that pressured the wheat market today. As for soybeans here, that really shot straight up. We had some consolidation in the middle of the day, and then another leg higher. I really think this has a whole lot to do with just a technical rebound after 6 strong days of selling here. We really hammered out a bottom right around that 14.03 level and then snapped back. I think it was also spurred on by the fact that China, or there was talks that China has canceled about 2 million metric tons of Brazilian beans that they intended to import back to China.
Right.
And most of that is because of delayed shipment. They just couldn't get the beans out of Brazil. China cancels them, and then the question is, will they turn to the U.S. to replace those beans? Right. Is there stocks for these near-term months? Is it short enough that they look to the U.S. to buy those beans? We're going to have to find out. Of course, we had export sales this morning. Did we see any of that activity reported in this week's report?
You know, relatively light week here on the export front for soybeans. We saw 107,000 metric tons sold here over the last week, or I guess last week's trade action. Trade expectations, we're looking for about 300 to 600,000 metric tons reported there. So certainly not a good week there for soybeans on the old crop. And that's kind of a deviation from what we've seen here really throughout the marketing year. Soybeans has been very strong on the export front, but in recent days, recent weeks, it seems like as those South American beans come out of the country, certainly U.S. sales have tailed off a little bit here. That seemed to be reflected in today's numbers. Looking at corn, a very light number there, 92,000 metric tons. Now, trade expectations were between 0 and 250,000 metric tons. So the trade in general was expecting a light week. But certainly the corn number this morning did deliver a light number there, 92,000 metric tons. And then wheat had a relatively good showing today, came in line with trade expectations. It was at the low end, but 484,000 metric tons reported in this morning's export sales report. So I guess to answer your question, Cody, bottom line, we didn't see China a big buyer of U.S. soybeans this week. We didn't really expect them, or I expect this report to show that. This was reflective of last week's sales. Certainly here, though, I would think in next week's action, we'd want to see some business return to the U.S. market.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's built into the expectations. So next week, if we get export sales and China is not an active buyer, I think that would kind of shock the market.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
Logan, you know, considering the export sales that came out this morning, where does that leave us in terms of meeting the USDA's expectations?
Yeah, if we jump in here to the model that we've been following throughout the marketing year here on GrainTV, as you can see here, we're looking at corn. Now, this is on the old crop, and we're now 30 million bushels behind pace needed to meet USDA expectations. Basically, the blue bars here are weekly sales figures. The red line is our seasonally adjusted pace to meet USDA projections. And as you can see, today's bar came in well low of that 92,000 metric tons reported. And in general here, week over week, we've now backed off 6 million bushels on the pace needed to meet USDA expectations.
So despite the fact that the USDA continues to revise the export sales down for corn, we continue to disappoint even with the revisions that the USDA has made in the last WASDE report.
Absolutely, yeah. These models reflect those revisions here. You know, weekly or on a monthly basis, we do get updated projections from the USDA in terms of expected export sales. So these models do reflect the most recent number, and as you said, we've seen that get backed off quite a bit here over the last several USDA WASDE reports. If we take a look here at soybeans, it's still a relatively different story than corn. Once again here, the red line is the pace needed to meet USDA expectations. The blue bar is reported weekly sales. And similar to corn in that case, we did have a relatively light number here this week, but it is different than corn that we're still ahead of pace right now in our minds to meet USDA expectations by about 119 million bushels. However, that has slowed down a little bit here. We're now 119 million bushels, but that's 5 million bushels less ahead of the pace than we were last week.
Yeah, so it seems like last week, we had really good sales, and as you can see here, it was well above that red line, which is the expectations for that particular week to be on pace with USDA expectations. This week, we're well below that. Next week, if we don't get at least above that red line, I think that would disappoint the market, and it could lead into some selling.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, recent bull action in the soybean market has been kind of contingent on this idea that South America is not able to provide China with beans in an efficient manner. Therefore, they're going to be coming to the U.S. market, and obviously we're going to have to kind of see the rubber meet the road here in a sense. We're going to need to see those export sales booked here in the next couple weeks, I think, for that sentiment to remain in the bean market.
Yeah, and we'll be keeping a close watch on the Foreign Ag Service, see if there's any reportable sales that come out, especially tomorrow. We'll definitely keep you guys in tune on Twitter. Now, one of the questions that one of our clients asked us was, how high do you think this soybean market can go right now? And quite frankly, I'm in the camp where we might move higher tomorrow simply because of the very strong bar that we traded today. We closed out near the highs of the day. I think that has momentum. We closed above that 200-day moving average. That's good momentum. The bottom line here is we could move higher, but I can't imagine we'll get a whole lot higher than that 1480 level. We're going to have to see how the trade reacts tomorrow. If we get a long wick, a long kind of doji wick where we trade up and then close out near the lows, I would suspect that would most likely be the short-term high for soybeans and may present a possible selling opportunity if you're looking to market your crop. Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up today's Grain TV. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, and we will see you tomorrow for the weekly wrap-up.
Have a good one.